Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Welcome to Livingston. My name is Don Putkela.
And I'm Angela Putkela.
And this is our podcast, Welcome to Livingston, brought to you by the Putkela Group with KW Living here in Brighton. And we are just excited to have you here today.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a great guest here. You want to go ahead and introduce them?
Yes, so this is Brian Truskowski with Illuminate, and we're really happy to have you here today.
Good to be on the show, everyone.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Welcome. So it's an interesting business that you have. Do you want to kind of give us the 10,000 foot view of what Illuminate is?
It's a bit of a scary view from up there. In short, I've been a bodywork practitioner for the last 10 plus years. 10 plus years. And throughout that, I've had my own journey of personal growth and self-development. And as a result of that, I started teaching personal growth and self-development leadership workshops. For a while, I was teaching at the Ann Arbor District Library, and that was lots of fun teaching there. It sounds funny to say this, the flagship thing that I teach is self-care massage. And it's gone through so many iterations over the years to the point where I just sort of, as a teacher, don't really prepare before I teach because I've done it so many times.
Right.
Yeah. A little more organic that way, though.
It started off initially as a 3-part series: head, upper body, lower body. And the first time I ever taught it was that as a series. And then from there, I just sort of distilled it down into just 1 hour and a half class. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, depending on people. And actually, this coming weekend, too late for the airing of this, but regardless, there is a festival called the Divine Pine Gathering in the Irish Hills. And I'll be teaching it there. So, but I only have 60 minutes to teach it. So it's going to be like, how am I going to do this?
Right.
Reminds me of that song, head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, get that all in.
Go run it through. So teaching and then coaching. So how the coaching came into play. So I have different facets of what I coach on. The broad statement is transformational and spiritual life coaching is the broad statement of it. What I've added to that, and I have a little more passion for, maybe in this moment, is tiny living consulting, TLC, from me to you. And what that means is, for those playing the home game who have followed me on other channels, is a year and a half ago, bought a 20-foot shuttle bus in Phoenix, Arizona, and converted it into my full-time, gorgeous, built, custom, all solid wood, tiny home that I live in currently. And it's currently on the market for sale. So I'm looking to move that. On the tails of me finishing the tiny house, a friend of mine invited me to come down to Tennessee to build 2 tiny houses for her on a property for her to live in Tennessee. And all this is documented on my YouTube channel, Traveling Bodhi, B-O-D-H-I, Traveling Bodhi. And so out of this, I've also, before this, been, I'm shocking both of you because this is not on the script. I go off script all the time.
No worries.
So,
well, it's more questions, more guideposts.
I'm a wild card for you. But anyway, I'm getting to the point is I've been researching tiny living for a long time. And part of what I do is helping people that are in that curiosity and question and query of what's this looking like? What do I do? How do I get into it? And I have lots of questions more so. When I work with my coaching clients, it's more me asking questions than telling them what to do. Because my belief in knowing is that ultimately people know what they want. It's just me to unearth it out of there.
Right.
And so with the tiny living, it's consulting. So it's more me giving information to people. Really, as opposed to, it's the both, asking them why, but also like helping clarify and maybe look at this direction, look at that direction.
Right. Because that's fascinating because, people in their housing and such, there's a lifestyle for if you live on a lake. There's a lifestyle if, you live in certain types of communities and such, but tiny living, that's household
a whole lifestyle itself.
Is something completely different because there's nobody in their normal house that can fit, there's only so much room in a tiny house. What do you bring with you? How do you go about that lifestyle? I guess it's a mental shift, isn't it?
It is. It's a minimalistic life,
okay.
And one kind of has to have a minimalistic life mindset to go into it. Ideally, because you only have so much space to get in there, right? And you also have to get creative with space use, right? So a lot of times things have multi-purposes, right?
Right.
That makes sense.
And I've been sort of living under this sort of mindset for many years. It's like, I don't like being the guy in the kitchen that has one micro utensil for every micro project. Like I like a French press because I can do a lot with it. It's not just coffee. I can make tea. I can do a lot of stuff with it, right? So one of the questions on this that I can kind of touch on that I teach and I talk about is scarcity to abundance. Yeah. And this is sort of what I'm referring to here, right? Yeah. So abundance, most people think abundance is lots of money, lots of resources, lots of whatever. But
lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff. But there's this saying that I've said in many things before, your stuff owns you. You don't own your stuff. I've met a lot of people, hoarders and elsewise, whose lives are controlled and guided by their stuff. Right. I can't go on holiday because I have this. I can't move because of this. I can't... it gets crazy, right? Yeah. So for me, it's just, I'm maybe going on a tangent, but abundance doesn't have to be an abundance of stuff. It's an abundance mindset, meaning like, here's one angle on it. Either with coaching, with Bodywork, with Tiny Living. Do you remember those commercials from the 80s, those billboards we saw, like a whole crappy alleyway full of tires and just junk? Right. And they said, do you see prosperity and possibility here, or do you see a dead end? Okay. Do you remember these? Yep. So for me, I see prosperity and potential. I can see, a dumpster fire and see potential in that. So for me, that's kind of how I operate. And that's sort of an abundant mindset. Yeah. Right. Where scarcity is, oh no, it's done. It's over with. It's failed. Might as well just walk away. Got you. Yeah. So for me, I have that perspective with my life in general. Got you.
It's a great mindset.
Does that sort of...
that does sort of, and it's so interesting. And I know we're off with the tiny houses a little bit, but like on the abundance and all the stuff people have, right? And you said it's a lifestyle and such. It's amazing how many times in our business that I'll talk to someone that they're going to move again, and they've had boxes in their basement that have not been open for 4 years from the previous move. Yep. It's like, well, why do you... If you never had to go into it, I understand memorabilia and keepsakes and such, but you don't have 30 boxes of memorabilia and keepsake.
Yep. And likewise, so as you two will both love this. I'm currently 40 years old. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 20, and I've averaged moving once a year for the last 20 years. Wow. Over 7 states. Over 7 states. Right. And so it's fun. I got lots of great stories out of it, but at the same result, it sort of forced me to be a minimalist. Yeah. Right. Because if I'm moving state lines, basically I jettisoned everything that wasn't either memorable, important, or intentional with something. All the furniture got jettisoned. Right. Because it was cheaper to do that and buy it in a new town than it was to rent a truck and drive it across state lines. Right. Right. So it's funny how what you just said, there's definitely places I've lived, and this is part of the abundance mindset. It's like, well, do I need this? No. Right. Yeah. Do I want it? Sure. Do I still have a corner of my parents' basement? Yes. But it's things that I find are important, and I'm grateful through the grace of God that they'll let me keep these few things there, right? Yeah. Right. And not drag them all over the place. But what's funny is tying into this, I've decided in the last few months that I am putting roots in Livingston County because I'm done moving. I had this paradoxical thought while living in my bus this winter, which was, everywhere that I've lived has reminded me of why I need to be in Michigan. I'm a born and raised Michigander. Okay. And after, trying to run away for 20 years to 6 different states, I realized this is where I need to be.
Wow. No wonder you get along with Joyce so well. Yeah, I love that. Circle.
So my plan is to sell this bus, take the revenue from that, and invest in land here. Ideally Howell area is what I'm looking at. Yeah. So, but all this to say, kind of what's coming back in more what I'm wanting to talk and focus on is my bodywork practice. Right.
Great.
And I wanted to ask about that because you've said bodywork a few times. I don't know much about that, and a lot of people out there listening might not know. What is bodywork?
So I got my new line for you, everyone. Bodywork, I ain't working on cars. I'm working on humans, people with issues. And yes, Angela, you sort of pointed this out before the show. My forte are shoulder issues, TMJ issues. I also do craniosacral therapy. And I'll just say this, what makes you different, Brian? What makes me really different is as a body worker. So to kind of help clarify, Don, body work, the best way I can sort of say it is more of an advanced massage therapy. Okay. In massage therapy, most people, when they think of massage, the reason I don't call myself a massage therapist is massage people think, oh, I'm going to go lay down. They're going to rub me with oil and lotion. I'm going to feel pretty when I get done in 60 minutes. people who come to me have a specific issue, a trauma, something they've been holding on to. I just worked on someone, and I'm not saying this out of bragging, I'm saying this out of data points. I've had multiple people coming to me, including a new client that came to me on Friday who's had shoulder issues for over 10 years. And I worked on her for an hour and a half, and I just checked in with, this was Friday, I checked in with her today, and the issues are still resolved.
Wow. That's remarkable.
Right. And I will keep working with her to help it balance out. Right. So it's like this. I don't use lotion or oil. I haven't done that in over 6 years. I often give my options to my clients to stay fully clothed because as women, some women don't feel comfortable getting naked in front of a man, even though there may be sheets and dressing involved, right? Mm-hmm. Some guys don't want to. Right. But I've found, because I vary between energy work and physical manipulative work, kind of like sports massage, it's easier for me to just keep the client clothed, because as I'm varying through this, if I have a fistful of oil in my hands, it's hard to do myofascial work, or it's hard to do energy work while doing that. And those may be words you don't understand, but basically working with the body in an intentional way, although it may not be comfortable in the moment. I actually had one contractor client so many years ago. He was a painter. He had carpal tunnel, quote unquote. Basically, he had a whole bunch of tight muscles because he's painting all day long. Yeah. Right. He heard about me. I gave him a quick demo at the end of a Sarasnet meeting, and he goes, I don't know what you just did, but my wrist already feels better in 5 minutes. And so he saw me for about 6 months or a year or so. And after a few weeks, he canceled his carpal tunnel surgery because he didn't have carpal tunnel. Yeah. So for those playing the video game, want to check this out. If you people who might have carpal tunnel think I have carpal tunnel, if you can do this, you don't have carpal tunnel. For the people listening, basically, if you put the back sides of your hands together, not the palms, but the back sides of your hands together, and you're not in pain, you do not have carpal tunnel.
Right, because that's the closing of the passageway,
correct. Carpal tunnel is a literal bonious passageway where all the flexor muscles from your hand go through. And when the tendons get irritated, that's inflammation. So it's carpal tunnel syndrome. So it's being inflamed through that. So when I tell people that and they say, the idea of that makes me hurt, that means you actually have carpal tunnel. That's not something I can deal with because that's an overinflammation and overuse syndrome. Right. So what I can work with are people who have tight muscles.
Got you.
And I help to normalize them.
Got you.
And what I sort of do that is, and this is not unique, but it's the idea, and I was mentioning this on the podcast with Jason the other day, if you have a trigger point or stuck spot, the idea is it's more of a focused meditation, meaning like I'm working on this and I encourage my clients to breathe into it and breathe it out, and not breathe it into your bellies, but breathe it out of your body. And by doing that, I was telling this to someone the other day, realizing that in yoga, in athletics, whatever, you're using your breath as a conveyance to move energy through your body, right?
Yeah.
To help lift weights, whatever. Same premise, but when I'm working with you. So when I'm doing that, I'm encouraging the co-creative experience with my clients. When I'm here, I tell people, one reason I was actually thinking about getting out of Bodywork for this reason, but I'm going to be having a different intention now, is I'm not here to fix you. I can't fix you, nor do I want to fix you. And I have a lot of people saying, I'm just going to go with them. They're going to fix me. And well, that's the allopathic method, meaning like doctors, medicine, and these things. For me, the idea is I want to educate you. And this is part of the empowerment and the abundant mindset. I'm here to educate you to help you take care of yourself. I came up with this saying so many years ago to prove a point, and I had to marry two parables. What I want to do is lead a horse to water and teach him how to fish. For those, I'll give you a minute to think about that one. Yeah. Two parables. People are like, but you just did. I'm like, exactly. So because I say this, I can lead a horse to water, but if he doesn't know what he's doing, I can shove his head underwater. If he still doesn't know what he's doing, he's blowing bubbles and he's getting upset at me, and I'm getting upset at him. So no one's winning. Yep. Right? And so if I give him the loaf of bread or the fish and he still doesn't know what he's doing, it's still a fruitless experience. Yeah. Right. So if I can lead him there, give him the tools, show him how to use it, that person will be abundant and resourced and not necessarily need me for their health and well-being. Yeah, it's great to come see me once a week or once every other week or whatever it may be, but ideally I want to give the power to my clients. Right. Right. That's how I see
Set
this.
them up for success.
Right. And that's ironically how this workshop, the self-care massage workshop, came to be, which was I was a few years in my practice and teaching clients various things. And someone's like, do you teach this? I'm like, no, you should. Okay.
Right.
And it just kind of went from there.
How often do you do these workshops?
It depends. I mean, I've been out of the field for the last, like I said, 2 years because of COVID and me building the bus and so on and so forth. I'm doing the class now. I don't have any actively scheduled currently, but I'm in process. I just moved to Livingston County like a month or two ago.
Right.
Welcome to Livingston.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah.
I lived in Ann Arbor for almost 10 years. I loved it, and I am no longer interested in living in Ann Arbor. I want to start my new community here in Livingston County. I'm very excited to be here. So nothing on the calendar yet, but I would say stay tuned. You know, I will have on my socials, which we'll give in the show notes.
Right.
My socials will have, upcoming events as posted.
Right.
So
and a lot of that is teaching people how to take care of their own body, because a lot of times we forget that, like, you need to take care of your body. What you put into it matters, and what exercises you're doing matters. And, I've seen it all the time where it's like, oh, I'm going to exercise. Well, you exercised every day for a month and a half. That probably wasn't a good idea. It's learning those things. But if you do it the right way and you're talking about like the massage and such, you're kind of learning, I guess, what to listen to, right?
Right. Absolutely. And so one of the very first self-care massage workshops that I taught in Ann Arbor proved to me, and I made this a teaching point for those who were paying attention, was at that particular, it was the beginning iteration. So I was teaching more normal stretches, and I wasn't getting into actual hands-on stuff yet. So it evolved over time. But by and large, there were two men in their 60s, or probably 70s, in their 60s or 70s. And I was teaching just a simple heel stretch, like stand on a stair and stretch your heel, right, for the posterior calf.
Right.
And the guy in the front goes, well, how long should I do this for? I said, I don't know, start with 10 seconds and go from there. He goes, well, what if I need more? I'm like, then you go longer. Without even cue or like provocation, a guy in the back goes, I couldn't imagine doing that stretch for more than 5 seconds. I'm like, fantastic, right? Like, does everyone see this? Like two men of the same demographic who should be doing, quote, the same exercises need two completely opposite things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, it's the lead a horse to water thing, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, when I'm teaching things, it's really about getting people in their body and paying attention. And what I mean about that is, again, the lead a horse, we can start with a framework of ideas, but the idea is no one knows your body more than you know your body.
Right.
Right? And anyone who says elsewise is lying and manipulating and trying to get something
honestly,
out of
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad, but I mean, I've heard it from clients and I've witnessed it and I hate to say the allopathic realm, where there's this hierarchy where people go, doctor, what's wrong with me? It's this. Okay. And people just succumb to whatever the hierarchy of the doctor says.
Yeah.
Right. And here's another sub and somewhat morbid thing where if a doctor says you're dead in 6 months, I've heard this. Some people will be dead in 6 months. Other people are going to go, I'm sorry, screw you. I'm not taking your plan, walking out, and they live for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So it's, I have a hard time with anyone of any modality saying, this is the way you have to listen to me and anything else is wrong.
Right.
Right.
Because how do you know what's best for me?
Right.
You don't. Right. And so I'll just leave that there. Right.
This is true. Well, and it's not black and white, and there's so many shades of gray with so many things.
There is. And I'll say this, and I haven't shared this on air. In high school, I came up with this analogy. It's a bicycle wheel. And as everyone knows, a bicycle wheel, and there's the hub in the middle. There's the rim on the outside, and there's all the spokes that connect it.
Right.
And all the spokes have to overlap before touching the inner hub. And so for me, with this analogy, what I do is I put whatever thing in the inside, religion, exercise, diet, whatever. And with that, there are so many modalities that support that. Let's just look at diet, right? You have gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, paleo, all these keto things, right? But they all sort of came from the same thing, but they're all needing each other in order to exist, right?
Got you.
They all sort of carnivore, vegan, they all sort of oppositely support each other, right?
Yeah.
And with it, the hub, or the ring is the concept, right? It holds it all together. And so with this is the idea, is like people say, well, this is better, or that's better. It's like, well, everyone needs it. You could be keto, you could be paleo, and I can be vegan. Are we all right or wrong? No, it's what we're needing.
Right.
And we could all switch next week because we're listening to our bodies and may know what's better or not.
Got you.
Right. I know many people who are vegan for years, and after being vegan for 10 years, discovered that doesn't work for me anymore.
Right.
It worked then, but it doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Right, that's true, because different periods of time, different people need different things.
We aren't who we were before.
Yeah.
Right.
We get older. Things happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's true. After being a nomad for 20 years, sometimes it's like, it's time to settle down.
But your uncle was a vegetarian for what, 30 years?
Oh,
and then
my
one day
gosh.
decided to start eating meat again?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy.
You know, but his body told him it's time to start eating meat, right?
Yeah. And what's curious about that is I went through it multiple times, is there's a shame piece that goes through it, which is why I have a hard time with any type of boxes. I'm a this box, I'm a this, I'm a vegan, I'm a whatever. Because what I discovered, and I know I'm not alone in this, is people will develop their community around that.
That makes sense. And then if they change from that, then all of a sudden it threatens their community.
Right, because you're in the community that's supporting.
Whatever that is.
Right, we're all vegans.
Whatever it is.
Right.
And in fact, for people on the healing journey, if you want a really fascinating book, Carolyn Myss, however you pronounce her name, has a book, Why People Don't Heal and How They Can. Very profound book. I read it probably 10 years ago. And one thing she said in this is around community is, let's take the AA community, for example.
Right.
Wonderful community, very supportive, very progressive, and very helpful. However, if someone gets into that organization and now that becomes their community, now their whole life is focused in that community of, and I'm just going to leave it there. I have a lot of my own other words I'd put there, but I won't right now. But what I'm saying is, if someone wants to get out of that community to go do something that they feel is more progressive in their own life path, it's going to be hard for them because their entire community is in that organization.
I got you. Well, I like your analogy with the bicycle wheel, because you're right. All of those different ideas within a concept, they connect to each other. They cross over paths.
Different.
And everyone, whichever one they're in whichever one's the right one for them. And it can change. And same thing with, the body work or the healing or such. But I did want to ask about like TMJ issues.
Yep.
Because a lot of people have TMJ issues, and it's things people don't talk about that often.
Absolutely. So just because I have a need for clarification, TMJ, temporomandibular joint, it's this thing. So temporal bone, mandibular bone, and it's the joint in between it, right?
Right.
So a lot of people will say, I have TMJ. It's like, everyone has TMJ. We all have a TMJ.
Right.
What we don't have is the dysfunction that goes around it.
Right.
And so I have been trained in at least 2, possibly 3, and that's what I'm not saying. But in massage school, I studied myofascial therapy and neuromuscular therapy. So therapeutic work, learn how to work outside and inside the mouth, right? To help with this. I also studied craniosacral therapy, and that's a big thing in this community. I guess not many people do, and that's a specialty that I have, to work inside the mouth. So it's a complicated thing. There's a lot of muscles, and it's about being intentional, going very slow, because most people who have this are very tender in all of these spots. And so, was there a specific question you wanted me to answer?
No.
Or just about what
I was just interested in it a little bit, because I know if someone like suffers from TMJ, like they're not going to chew gum. They're gonna, they have issues, and that's that. Some people say like it's the clicking or it's the such that some people with that may be like, well, I've dealt with this the last 20 years. It's just the reality of my life. And seeing that you work on it, I would guess that you would say that doesn't have to be the reality of your life.
This is true. So in short, what I've done in the past with TMJ people are this. It's what I have a few ground rules for my sessions, but the first and foremost is this session's about you. It's not about me. Because I feel there's a lot of egoic practitioners out there who claim they aren't egoic. But I had a client on Friday say, no, Brian, you're actually coming from your heart as a place of curiosity, inquiry, and wanting to actually serve, and not being upset when things don't go my way, right? Mm-hmm. So with that, I work, sometimes it's a feather weight. Sometimes it's doing energy work. Sometimes people who have such chronic TMJ work, even just resting my hand, the weight of my hand on their jaw is too much.
Right.
So sometimes I have to do like off the body energy work or whatever, right? And so it's being very intentional, very slow, and again, working with that person to kind of help them breathe through it and internal or externalize it and get it out. Also, another thing that I offer, and this is, I'm not rare in this, but it's not many people who focus on it, is the emotional aspect of trauma in the bodies. Do you know what I mean when I say that or no?
I believe so.
Okay. So the mouth is the avenue of expression, right? Not necessarily words coming out of our mouth, but how we're expressing ourselves in the world. And what I have found is 9 times out of 10, people who have chronic clenching, TMJ, grinding, bruxism, migraines, so on and so forth, as I would say to clients, there's something that you're not saying. Right, you're keeping your mouth shut because you don't want to say it, right? And so I've gotten people to cry just by saying that, not intentionally because they see the truth in it.
Right.
But then at that point, it turns into kind of a coaching therapy session, which I'm skilled to help people out with. But at minimum, what I tell people is A, I don't need to know the story. I'm more than willing to help you work through it. But what my encouragement for you to do is to find some way to express this on your own, either through art, through singing, screaming, yelling, writing it down, burning it, getting it out of your system, whatever it may be. I do not support people to stay in unhealthy situations ever. But regardless, you need to find some way to express it, right?
Right.
Typically in private where people would feel expressing it
Right.
would be the best. But what I found is once people get that aha, they're, oh, okay. And then they have that permission to move it, permission to let it free.
And their body can improve, right?
Right. And I'll just say personal experience for those naysayers that may not think that I'm speaking truth is I was living I had a roommate situation a few years ago where there was stuff coming up that I didn't feel comfortable with. I often woke up with my teeth hurting in the middle of the night because I was clenching so hard. After I moved out of that situation, the scenario, I wasn't doing it anymore.
Right. Well,
and nothing changed other than my environment. I didn't have to say these words to this person. Just the environment changed.
Well, and I think a lot of times it's just someone telling them those things, because if you're a person that grinds periodically, you know innately of like, oh, what's bothering me right now? Because I wasn't grinding for 6 months, and now I've ground my teeth the last 4 nights, and I'm waking up with a headache. Well, something changed in your life that's causing you to do that. Figure that out, and then maybe that doesn't occur anymore.
It's the beginning of it, absolutely.
Right.
And also with that, I have a lot of self-care techniques that I offer to people to work on themselves to kind of help create ease on some level from a musculoskeletal
Got you.
Neat. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
So,
well, I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, and I do want to circle back to that tiny living stuff because that seems really interesting, very relevant, in terms of, popularity and so forth, and having lived it and done it. Is there any insight you can offer to those thinking about the whole tiny living experience?
Absolutely. The first thing I tell people is there's this wonderful thing that I call fantasy versus reality.
I love it.
Fantasy is always greater than reality, and there are some people who challenge me on that. But there is this fantasy of Instagram lifestyle. Oh my God, we're going to go do this and this and this, and it's going to be fabulous. But however, as you know, when you move from A to B, you take your stuff with you from A to B. Yes. And I don't mean your possessions. I mean all the stuff.
Everything.
And when you're living in tiny situations, you can't escape your stuff. If anything, it's more focused in your world because you can't run away from it as much. So people have this fantasy that, oh, I'm going to go move to Hawaii or whatever, and all my life will be perfect. Well, no, your patterns are going to follow you. And this is a coaching piece, right? But with tiny living, as an interest, if people want to have some questions to think about, on my Traveling Bodhi YouTube page, again, BODHI, Traveling Bodhi, I have a whole playlist of questions. There's about 10 of them, 3 or 4 minutes long of, think about it. Do you want to live mobily, non-mobily, right? Do you want to live in a bus, a van, a pull-behind trailer? Would you rather have a more stable thing like a yurt or a shed, right? So what do you want to do? One of the newer things is like those shipping containers, right? What do you want to do? And also from there, what I tell people is why. The main thing, what's your why? Why are you doing this, right? Is it to escape the rat race? Is it what? How, when you're doing this, are you going to make money? That's a great question, right? Yeah. So these are just some preliminary things. And on top of that, how are you going to fund it? Is you going to have somebody else build it? Are you going to build it yourself? Do you have the tools, resources? Before you buy a rig, like a bus, where are you parking it? Where are you parking it to build it? Where are you parking it to live in it? If you don't have those questions answered before you buy it, I know a lot of people who end up either parking it on the street and having to move it because most places don't like the idea of some random bus being parked anywhere, or, being kicked out. So really get clear on all of it, right? Before you build it, before you put all this money into it, what's your lifestyle going to be? You're going to stay with friends? Do you have a place to park it yourself? Are you just going to do traveling the world? Are you going to stay up in HOA? I mean, what are you going to do with it? So there's a lot of questions, and a lot of these are just proposed on my channel. It's called, like I said, Tiny Living Consulting on my YouTube channel. So if people are interested, I would say that'd be a good starting point, because there's like a good bunch of questions just to sit with. What do you want to do? Do you want to have a bathroom and shower in your vehicle? Do you not? Do you want to cook in it? It's just going to be a mobile tent, basically. What is it you're going to do? And what I tell people is you get to break all the rules. There are no conventions in tiny living, like there are there are more conventions in normal housing, but you can break rules, right?
Yeah.
But in tiny living, there's no conventions. Right, you can really do whatever you want. So the sky's the limit with it. Yeah. So, and again, that's the abundant mindset. Bringing this back in, how do you want to do it?
Got you.
Absolutely. We have a friend who does remote work, and she's so excited. She's going to take with her new husband. The two of them are taking a year to do some of this, and so very excited for them.
So I will say this: that's awesome. And if you don't know it, don't be afraid to ask help. And I'm not saying YouTube it, even though that's an option, because there's a real thing. I witnessed this, was that there was this young couple, they bought a bus, they did it all themselves, awesome, builds a lot of esteem. However, they were about to summit the mountain in Tahoe in California, and the electrical fire happened because they did electrical wrong, right? Yikes. Fortunately, they saved it and nothing got destroyed. However, that's a real thing. You don't want to mess with electrical. So for me personally, I don't know electrical enough. So I hired an electrician. My dad used to be a millwright for Ford. So I asked him a lot of questions. I hired an electrician. I'm like, I'm willing to pay you to get this right.
Right.
I don't want to get this wrong. There's other things I'm willing to fudge and figure out, but not that.
Yeah.
Right. So know your zone, know your lane, and know your comfort. But I will strongly say, especially with electrical, don't play around with it, because as you know, as realtors,
right.
Plumbing, okay, you get a little bit of water places, but electrical is fire, sparks flying, people screaming.
Right. Yes, that's a concern.
And the more questions you ask, the more you prepare, the more chance you have of it being a positive experience, rather than a month and going, oh my gosh, what did I just do to my life?
Right. I will say, and last thing we can wrap, local person, Roger Burnett, bought a rig.
Yes.
And this is great. I don't know how well you know his story, but I had a chance to talk with him the other day, and he goes, oh yeah, my life work, had all the plans to do it. We bought the rig, we got it home, and we realized it didn't fit in our garage. I'm like, that would have been a good thing to measure first. Yeah. So that they ended up having to hire out. But he said, we did one thing, and this was brilliant. And the brilliant thing is they, instead of like giving up right away, they said, well, heck with it. We're going to use this as a mobile tent. They put a little heating element in it so they can go skiing up north, and they drove in it empty for a better part of the winter to get the feel. Do we want to do this? Do we want to take the next investment, or do we want to get out while it getting's good?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because most people, I met a couple down in Tennessee. We bought a 40-foot Bluebird. It was great. They drove it twice and like, oh my God, no. Right. Yeah. So they found a place and they parked it, and it's never going to move ever again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So fantasy reality.
Exactly. Big difference. Yeah.
So
very much so.
Does that give you a lot to chew on?
But those really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
And if people are interested in doing more, typically I do them remotely over the phone or Zoom. And so if you want more information, my information is in the below. You can contact me with questions.
Oh, perfect.
Great. Now, what do you like best about Livingston?
Oh, I like small towns. Like I said, born and raised Michigander. I like small towns. Howell is amazing. I can feel the history of it there. I love Brighton because it's just big enough. It's the Goldilocks for me. Like Ann Arbor is just a little too big, a little too crazy. Used to not be, but now I love the cuteness. I really love the Brighton. I call it Beat Cat, the Beat Cat, the Brighton Coffee House and the theater, the mill pond. There's just it's cute. It's quintessential. It's easy to get around. It's not overwhelming. And by and large, the people who I've talked to here are very. I mean, a lot of Michigan's this way, but down to earth, grounding, loving, helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, but why I love this is I've never in my 40 years really ever spent time here. I've spent time in Washtenaw and Wayne and everywhere else, but never here. But I think it's funny. It's like the gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
Like,
You made it.
I'm like, this has been here the whole time. How did I not know this cool place existed?
Yeah.
Right? So that's,
Right.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. We just love it.
It's this nice hidden gem that we won't tell anyone about.
Yeah.
There you go.
Honest to goodness, great. Well, we've made reference to the ways to contact you a lot, and it's in the show notes and all that. In terms of our podcast, we come out every week. We're on Spotify, Sounder, Apple Podcasts, Facebook. Like and subscribe. Come check out Brian and Illuminate and check out his YouTube and his stuff as well.
Yes.
Again, check the show notes.
Yeah, so I mean, thank you everyone for listening today. Definitely check it all out. Check the show notes. Check out our Facebook page, Welcome to Livingston, or our website, www.welcometolivingston. And thank you again so much for coming in
joining
today.
us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's
It's been wonderful being on air.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yay!
Excellent.
And
welcome to
Livingston.
Livingston.